Hello, everybody. Welcome to the World of Concacaf podcast. I'm Eric Schmitz,
And I'm Donald Wine.
and we are very excited to talk about Nations League. That is coming up. But first and foremost, I want to talk about a friend of ours, a friend of the podcast. This past weekend, the Nashville soccer community, and as you know, as we've talked about in this podcast, Jonathan and I are Nashville natives. Donald is a fan of the city, he likes to come here a lot. Um, we've got a really great soccer community. But this past weekend, our town lost a beloved figure. Our friend Ben Cowherd, um, who was one of the founding members of our American Outlaws chapter here, um, a very good friend of Jonathan, a friend of mine, and a friend of anyone he has ever met. Um, Passed away in a motorcycle accident this weekend. And I just wanted to say, yeah, it is a terrible, terrible loss for our city, our soccer community. I mean, American soccer community. He was a well-known figure for anyone who would come to Nashville for a U.S. men's national team game. He was there for to help out with every watch party, tailgate. He was a drummer. He helped set up drum lines to keep the American Outlaws section rocking, and he was very active in the supporters of the Nashville Soccer Club, from USL into MLS. Everyone knew him, everyone loved him, and it is a terrible, terrible loss for us and for everybody.
Yeah, I mean, it it's hard to talk about Ben in the past tense, and I think you put a lot of what I would say very eloquently, but just to piggyback off of what you're saying, I over the last day or so since we found out, like all I've been kind of describing him as is a man with a heart of gold, because that's what he was, right? He, like you said, he was always willing to help. I got to know him through you guys, through you and Jonathan. Jonathan is not on this episode tonight. We uh, understood that he needed to take some time. He and Ben went to college together. I think they lived together
Yeah,
in
that's true.
college. So I
Mhm.
mean, this is a big. I mean, they've known each other a long time, and I met Ben through Jonathan and all of you guys down in Nashville, and I was just stunned at the news when Jonathan called me yesterday, because it was he's such a like you said, a beloved figure, always willing to help, never was a stranger. No one was ever a stranger around him, right? Like he was always welcoming, inviting, everything that you strive to be. Ben was. And on top of that, just a great guy. We've talked on this show. I'm coming down to Nashville in a couple of weeks, and we were looking forward to seeing each other. And it's just a terrible loss. So just a tragic loss. Just one moment can change everyone's lives for forever. So I pass along. I know we pass along our condolences to his family, to everyone at AO Nashville. Again, like you said, help found the chapter, help found Backline and the assembly, and just kind of all the support that Nashville ST currently has would not be where it is without Ben's contributions to that community. So I passed along my well wishes to everyone in Nashville who got to know Ben as well or better than I did, which was an absolute honor. So
Yeah,
I'm rambling, but it's so hard to kind of talk about that. And um, he will definitely be missed. I know when we're going to talk about Nations League, we're going to make sure we do him proud in Vegas.
for sure. And the one thing that I have not found shocking since this terrible, terrible tragedy, is just seeing the outpouring of support of everyone saying the exact same thing. Like everyone loved being around him. He was the most welcoming, supportive friend that you could want. Um, and not just from our soccer community, but from Nashville's music community. I mean, he worked in sound for a bunch of local venues. And I mean, he has a lot of experience with a lot of the music industry. I mean, the man worked on a Luke Combs record.
Mm-hmm.
Like even the biggest stars in country music are dealing with this like us. And I'm sure the tributes will continue. Huntsville City FC, the MLS Next Pro affiliate of Nashville SC, paid tribute to him in their game Sunday night, and that was awesome. I know Nashville SC has a home game coming up, and it's going to be emotional, like the watch party that they're going to end up having on Thursday night here in Nashville for the Nations League. It's going to be a tough time because it's a big loss, and we're just thinking of everybody that knew them and like ourselves, and reach out to each other, lean on each other, take care of each other. Because that's what Ben would do. So cheers to Ben.
Cheers to Ben. This one's for him.
So yeah, not the start to the show, the upbeat start to the show that Concacaf Nations League typically deserves, but we are where we are, and I think we should, continue with the soccer because that's what kind of brought us all together. And let's talk Concacaf Nations League finals because the greatest competition in modern sport is back, and it is in Las Vegas, Nevada for the finals, the penultimate event of this edition of the Nations League.
Before we start with the actual teams, can we just talk for a second about the fact that this fucking thing is being held in Las Vegas?
Listen,
I called
it going into this
months ago, right? We were both like sleuthing. We're like, you were like, I think it's Vegas. I was like, I don't know. And then there's that one little random article where they're like, oh, some soccer game is coming to Vegas. We're like, oh, that's it. That's the one. But I even asked some of the players, they've had press conferences throughout last week. And I asked like a couple of the players about like, just does it add to the prestige of being in this, grand tournament that is finals held in Vegas? Again, this is why this is the best tournament on the planet. Like ain't no Nations League games being held in Vegas. Like never, but it's going to happen on Thursday and we're going to be there. So I'm just super excited about that part.
Yeah. I mean, I like to think that I spoke it into existence.
Yeah.
So you're welcome, world. All right. So let's get into the teams. The semifinals, it's going to pit Panama against Canada, both first-time finalists for this tournament. And then the other semifinal is going to be the USA taking on Mexico. So we'll just kind of roll through the teams here and just kind of give a lowdown on what we're at and what we're looking for. First off, let's start with Panama, coached by Thomas Christensen. Donald, has Panama ever won a Nations League?
Oh, I have this in my notes. Hang on. No, never won.
Panama has never won a Nations League. So their first trip to the semifinals. Really weird spot for Panama because you look at the other three teams, they're definitely not as deep as the other ones. Now, they did play a warm-up friendly back on the 10th. They beat Nicaragua 3-2 on late goals by Michael Murillo and Roderick Miller. So they got a little bit of a confidence boost coming in. They got some reinforcements coming from MLS. Anwar Godoy is one of them. Heading out to Las Vegas. Donald, is Panama really in like a no-lose situation here? Because I feel like if you rank the four teams, everyone's going to put Panama fourth.
Look, man, we just talked about Las Vegas, and you forgot the best way to describe this team possible, and that this team is playing with house money. That's where they're at this point.
I like it. I like where you went there.
Yeah, I mean, it's true. They beat their arch rival, Costa Rica, to get here, and now they're the team that walks in. Everybody's like, well, it's not them. They're not going to win it. So they have nothing to lose. They really can just play with little to no pressure. And I'm sure that's not how they're approaching it. They're probably approaching it like they have an opportunity to win this tournament, and they do, because if they string some good ball together, anyone in this tournament can win. But I think when it comes to Panama, they're the ones that can play with the least amount of pressure because they're going up against the three giants of
Mhm.
at least from a geographical standpoint, in the case of the United States and Mexico, from a soccer standpoint, the giants of CONCACAF, all of them thinking that they're the best. And Panama is just there saying, hey, we're here too, and we can make some noise.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you know what they say about Concacaf Nations League? Throw out the record books.
Throw
You
out the record
know,
books.
you don't know what's going to happen. And as we saw in the previous Nations League, and pretty much every Nations League ever that we've seen, because there's been one, is the semifinals are can be quite chaotic and ridiculous. Like both of those 2021 semifinals were just like ridiculous.
I mean,
I
if
mean,
you think about it, the Nations League finals in 2021, there were 6 games, right? I'm sorry, 4 games. There were two
yeah,
semifinal, a third place, and a final.
yeah,
All of them were insane.
yes,
All of them. So we can't expect anything less here, especially in Las Vegas. And
yeah,
again, we had the game in Vegas, the Gold Cup final, where
yeah,
even that was insane. So
yeah,
like there's, I mean, this just setting itself up for again for something weird to happen, or the bounce of the ball, or you know
yeah,
something is going to happen in one of these games that's going to make everyone go, can you believe that? Yes, you can. As CONCACAF.
yeah, yeah. Nations League finals, insane. Vegas, insane. So really, Nations League finals in Vegas is insane squared. It's insane times insane. So we can only imagine what's going to happen. So Panama really playing with house money. Um, they got nothing to lose. Canada, their opponent, coached by John Herdman. Donald, can you check? Has Canada ever won a Nations League?
God, no, never. Like never.
No. Canada, there's some interesting stuff going on with them. First, I want to touch on the fact that they tried calling in Aiden Morris from the U.S., a dual national, and Aiden obviously looking up the depth chart and seeing Tyler Adams, our beautiful son, in his way for minutes, he's still like, nah, I'm good. Um, so Aiden Morris decides he basically just told him no. The other big thing with Canada right now is Phil Neville, along with Richard Shaw, just joined as assistant coaches. Um, do you think Phil Neville is ready for just stepping into CONCACAF Nations League?
He wasn't ready for US Open Cup. Like, I mean, this man, this is a bold strategy. Very few people have ever said, you know what we need to win this game? Phil Neville. Like, rarely happened in history. And when they do think that, it doesn't end up well. So I'm curious to see how this ends up and what the rationale is behind it. Because it's not like he has some, you know, inside information on Panama or the United States or Mexico. It's a very mind-boggling decision, especially considering how much money they probably had to pay to bring him onto the staff, knowing all the issues that Canada Soccer's had recently with
Mm-hmm.
financials with the women's team. The women are looking like, yo, you don't have any money for us, but you got enough money for Phil Neville. Like, come on now.
Yeah. I do wonder, this is purely speculation. There's always been that chatter about John Herdman getting another job elsewhere. And I really wonder if
Well,
Phil
that's how he
Neville's.
ended up with this job. Remember,
Yeah.
he was the women's coach, and then he said, I'm gonna leave. They said,
Yeah.
why don't we give you the men's job? And he goes, okay, I'll stay.
Yeah. I mean, there was chatter after the World Cup that he would go
Yeah, he
elsewhere.
was leaving, and then he was like, "I'm
Yeah.
staying." Yeah,
Yeah. So I wonder if Phil Neville's looking at this like, you know what, this guy's probably not going to stick around. This could be a pretty sweet gig to coach a national team lifestyle for 3 years, go to a World Cup, and then go do something else, you
I
know?
mean, it makes sense for him. I just don't
Yeah.
think it makes sense for Canada.
Yeah. Because I mean, I'm sure he's going to keep living in Miami. Like the man is not going to move to Canada
Failing
like
up.
this. But other notes for Canada, Derek Cornelius had to withdraw due to injury. Um, so that's a defender down. They've got their pretty much all of their attackers there. You've got your Jonathan Davids, your Alfonso Davies, um your what's his face? Tajon Buchanan. That's what it was.
Mm-hmm.
Um they've got a lot of attacking talent, but I am really curious to see Canada's whether Canada's defense holds up. Because that's always been the questionable part of their lineup of late in their resurgence as a program. Um, Also curious to see when Dane St. Clair kind of kicks Milan Boran to the side and gets between the sticks full time, because I feel like St. Clair is like on the verge of being right there.
I mean, he's starting for his club, and Milan Borjan is not anymore.
Yeah.
So that yes, that's an interesting battle. I also think you have a Tebow Hutchinson who's their captain. He's 40 years old. How much gas does he have left in the tank? It seems like he has plenty, but when it comes to Canada, they are kind of like again in a holding pattern between the wave of the future and like the past, and that kind of got them into trouble in the World Cup. They also, I'm sure, have the motivation because again they're claiming that they're the kings of Concacaf, despite their trophy case, but they need to actually show it because the last thing people remember of them is them crashing out of the World Cup last fall. So I'm sure they're eager to, right the ship and kind of say, hey, remember when we were good throughout qualifying? This is the team that got us there. And just like Panama, they just have to pick off a couple wins and catch either US or Mexico at their, slipping a little bit. So I don't know. They're a weird team to figure out which one's going to show up. But if it's the one from the World Cup, this is going to be a very, very bad week for them in Vegas.
Yeah. Atiba Hutchinson sitting on 103 caps for the Canadian national team. I'm sure he is, he's been holding on because he dreamed growing up of playing in a Nations League. So like this is finally like the last thing on his bucket list he can check off. And
this is what he lived
illustrates clear. Yeah. I mean, as a child, he just dreamed it's like someday a World Cup would be nice, but a CONCACAF Nations League, it's a dream.
He's going to leave his shoes on the field after the game's over. Like,
yeah.
Retired, done.
Yeah. Speaking of done and retired, Mexico, coached by Diego Coca. Donald, has Mexico ever won a CONCACAF Nations League?
The answer is never.
I believe. Never. I mean, Mexico. I believe all they've done is lose Nations Leagues.
Yeah.
So
they're winless.
Mexico never, ever, ever won a CONCACAF Nations League. Again, like I said, Diego Coca, the coach of the team. For now, it seems like his seat has been hot since he took the job. Now the Mexican Federation has a new executive team who did not hire Diego Coca. So they're just looking for a reason at this point. Mexico did have some couple tune-up friendlies. Most recently, they were able to get a 2-2 draw against Cameroon on Saturday in San Diego. They actually came back to get a draw. It's a really interesting point for Mexico because like they've got 2 kicks at the can to say they're back this summer. And if they go 0 for 2, there's going to be changes because they don't have to worry about qualifying. They've got Copa America and the 2025 Gold Cup to like get right. But right now, like the wheels are still off, whether or not they think that they're on the right track or not. They got to prove that they've, resolved the issues. And Diego Coca's coaching for his job, and he might be looking for a new gig before, the fall. Is there anything else with Mexico you want to touch on?
I think the difference between Mexico's roster and some of the other rosters is that I don't know that they brought their full A team to this particular tournament. There's some guys, if you followed Mexico, loosely throughout the years, there's a lot of names on here that are either unfamiliar to you or guys that you haven't heard in a long time. Really, the if you're looking at from a American perspective, Julian Araujo is on this roster, Edson Alvarez is on this roster, but then after that you got guys like Memo Ochoa, of course, Pineda, Gallardo, but like there's not a lot. There's some guys on here that people are going to be seeing at least play in person for the first time. I wonder if that's a strategy by Mexico to say like, hey, we need guys to start fighting for the shirt again, and to do that, we're going to bring in some guys that feel like they want to prove themselves. So, it's an interesting way to do it, especially compared to, again, some of the other rosters that we've seen for this, where they're bringing most, if not all, of their A lineups.
Yeah, and I mean, like they've got some guys who are hurt, so it's not like they're full. They're picking from the full allotment here.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but they have there's it's clear that there's going to be a little bit of shuffling between here and the Gold Cup. And you wonder if they might have been better served putting all their eggs into this basket and trying to win a trophy quick and then going from there. But yeah, they got a tough draw in the semifinals, and history is not on their side in Concacaf Nations League. So,
Yeah.
and finally, the fourth semifinalist, the United States of America, coached by interim to the interim manager, BJ Callahan. We'll talk about that in a second. But first, Donald, has the U.S. ever won a CONCACAF Nations League?
They have. In fact, they're undefeated in Nations Leagues. They've never
Really?
lost. Yeah,
Really?
LeVar Ball never lost.
All they have done is win CONCACAF Nations Leagues, you're saying?
Yep, they're the only ones.
And in Las Vegas, Nevada, they are on track to win yet another. As we mentioned, interim to the interim, BJ Callahan. That was kind of a surprise announcement. Like, right, we were like waiting for the roster to drop, and all of a sudden it's like new coach drop, and assistant coach BJ Callahan takes over for Anthony Hudson. Anthony Hudson takes a club position over in the Middle East. I congrats to Anthony Hudson for a job well done for the caretaking he did over a few months for the U.S. program, and he went and got his paper. So good for him. But BJ Callahan, hey, this is your first time coaching a national team ever as a head coach. Go play Mexico for a trophy.
Or any coach. He's never been
Yeah.
a head coach at any level. He's always been an assistant, which I don't think that part is weird on its face because he's being elevated. It's not like they went and found this guy. But he's the longest serving assistant in the program. He was started in 2019 under Greg Berhalter, continued as the number one guy alongside Anthony Hudson for these last 5 or 6 months. And yeah, I think the shock wasn't necessarily that Anthony Hudson was leaving. I think it was the timing of it. But he found his job, and when you get the call, you got to go. So BJ definitely has his work cut out for him. But when you look at the guys that he brought in, it's clear that they're playing to win this one.
Oh yeah, for sure. I think an interesting thing to me is that, I mean, Berhalter's contract expired in December, and they knew that Hudson was not the long-term solution. And this clearly probably didn't come out of thin air. Hudson probably didn't just walk into Soccer House and be like, "Yo, I quit." They probably knew that it was in motion, and it still didn't accelerate the process to get like a guy for this summer. Even though there's guys out there who you could have said, "Hey, we're going to sign you to a 6-month contract or whatever." So they give the reins to BJ Callahan, and his first task is to beat Mexico, like the U.S. has done frequently over the last few years. The exciting thing for the U.S. is the anticipated debut of Fuller and Balogun, the new dual national acquisition who just committed to the program. Do we think he starts on Thursday?
I don't think he starts. I think Pepe gets the start. And well deserved for Pepe. He's had a great year for Groningen, even though Groningen as a club did not have a great season. He I think showed that he can flourish in the Eredivisie, and it sounds like he will be staying in the Netherlands, maybe not with Groningen, but moving to a bigger club in PSV Eindhoven. But I think that's a lot of pressure, right? The kid already has pressure in Balogun. He already has pressure. We've talked about his recruitment and throughout the last few months and the hype that's around him. It would almost be a disservice to him if you throw him out there against Mexico and be like, perform. But I also think Pepe being there, he's performed, he's played against Mexico before, and then you bring on Balogun later on to get a taste of that rivalry. I think he thrives in that particular thing where the pressure's kind of reduced a little bit. Or again, in theory, the idea is if he's coming on looking to score, he's going to be looking to get his grits, right? Like He
Yeah.
scored 21 goals this season. First, believe it's the first American to ever score 20 goals in a top 5 European league in a season. So he's going to be going on there looking to perform, but the pressure is reduced by him coming on as a substitute.
Well, I mean, I think my concern with him is, do you think he has any idea what he's getting himself into? It's like, oh, I'm gonna go play for the US. Yeah, we got a big game against Mexico, but it's in the US, so it should be okay. The man does not understand that it's gonna be a hostile crowd.
Oh, he does. He does. And I think the great thing about the environment of the team right now, like the nature of the players that are on this roster, a lot of guys have already kind of, told him what it's going to be like walking into Allegiant Stadium on Thursday and seeing a sea of green instead of a sea of red, white, and blue. But I on the press conference he had last week, he was with Yunus Musa, and Yunus Musa is like, yeah, we talk all the time about all this stuff. So I don't think that's going to be a surprise. But again, it's not just him, right? There's a lot of guys on this roster who are newer to the national team, may not have been in this kind of pressure cooker of an environment for the Nations League, and then you add USA Mexico to the mix, and now it's just again, what is it? Insanity on top of insanity squared.
Yeah.
Like a lot of guys are going to be experiencing this for the first time. That's where you have some of these veterans who are younger, right? You have the Pulisics, you have the McKinneys, you have the Mooses, you have even the the Walker Zimmermans who have been a part of this and understand what it takes to win. They're going to be the guys that the United States relies on to try and get them through.
Yeah. I mean, it's good to have him back in the group. Miles Robinson has played Mexico in a pressure cooker game in this stadium before, and
scored,
if any,
and won.
he scored and won. The man is used to winning trophies at Allegiant Stadium. The big concern for me, I think, when it comes to the U.S. is the absence of Tyler Adams, because Tyler Adams clearly maybe like the most important midfielder on the team.
Oh, I don't think that's a question.
Yeah. I mean, it depends on how you assign positions to some of these wingers and attackers and stuff like that. But as far as like defensively, even more so than any of the defenders, defensively, Tyler Adams is the most important person on that squad. And in recent history, when he hasn't been available, Kellen Acosta has been like the de facto backup six, and neither of them are available for this game. Is that how concerned are you, scale 1 to 10, that the 6 is kind of unsettled for a game of this magnitude?
So when you were talking about who the most important midfielders are, I think Weston McKennie would be the most important midfielder on this team if Tyler Adams didn't exist as a human being, right? Weston McKennie, when he is out of the lineup, the United States traditionally does much poor because there is nobody who like for like can replace what he provides. Tyler Adams is the most important player on the United States men's national team because when he's not there, they have to change their entire shape. And that's the question entering this match is how are the U.S. going to deploy? I think they played a friendly, like a closed door friendly the other day, and they lined up in a lineup that people have not seen the United States do in a very long time. I mean, it was like the double pivot's one thing, but this was a double pivot with like 3 other midfielders and like 2 forwards. Like they were trying to figure out how they can attack Mexico and score goals while also, compensating for the fact that Tyler Adams could be anywhere on the field and never get tired and always be back defensively, even if he moved forward on the attack. So it's going to be interesting to see how I believe McKinney and Musa both start in some fashion, and maybe it's a double pivot, but that also means that they're also going to have more responsibility defensively, which is for McKinney is not always the best suit for him because we don't ask him to do that mostly. And that's where I think the questions lie is how do they deploy where they can get guys back defensively if there is a counterattack and also still be able to feel like they can push forward at any time. So I'm curious to see how that works. I don't want to say I'm concerned, but I'm very, very interested to see what BJ Callahan comes up with.
Yeah, for sure. Um, so yeah, those are the four squads. So as we said, Panama takes on Canada in the first semifinal on Thursday night. Mexico takes on the U.S. in the second semifinal on Thursday night. For some reason, the Panama Canada matchup is the one that's on national television, whereas the Mexico U.S. game is on streaming Paramount Plus. It is on Univision, but if you're listening to this podcast, you're probably watching English language broadcasts because, as you can tell, we are speaking English. Um, yeah,
Andres Cantor is calling, I believe, or is he calling? No, he's not calling the game. There's someone else that I was blanking on that's calling this game that's pretty good. So
yeah,
consider the
yeah.
Spanish feed if you need to. But
Yeah,
yeah,
for sure. All right, so those are the matchups. Down, who do you got going through to the final?
I think both games go to extra time. I think U.S. Mexico goes to penalties. I think the
Oh my
U.S. wins
god,
on penalties because Matthew Turner is a god. I think Canada emerges by scoring in extra time, and they end up meeting the United States in the final, reminiscent of 2007. I want to say where they had a just a fierce matchup, I believe, in the semifinal then. But I think in the end, the United States takes out Canada in regulation in the final.
okay. Um, I think Panama Canada does go to extra time. I think it goes to extra time 0-0. I think it's going to
Yes,
be a terrible Concacaf game.
sloppy game. Think the U.S. Honduras game 2 years ago where it was
Yeah,
just choppy and like
yeah,
no one really got any chances on goal. That's the game I'm thinking about.
yeah. Where like 20% of the first half is dudes laying on the field hurt.
Mm-hmm.
Like Panama is going to pull out the playbook and be like, yo, how can we make this a game? And I don't know if Canada is ready for that kind of game uh, in environment like Las Vegas. Um, but I think Canada is going to end up getting it done just because the depth. I think depth is the biggest issue for Panama. So Canada gets through, and then Mexico, U.S. I mean, you got to go with history. When was the last time Mexico beat the U.S. in a game that matters? You're looking back to the 2019 Gold Cup final.
Mm-hmm.
So I think Mexico, there is a huge mental advantage where the U.S. really can play with nothing to lose because, you know, the coach is not long term. He can be aggressive. Uh, we've got players trying to prove themselves. And with Matt Turner in goal, like you still feel it's a reliable situation, even without Tyler Adams. I think Mexico is just, yeah, there's a lot leaning on them right now, as there usually is. There's a lot of pressure towards the Mexican national team just from themselves. Um, but Diego Coca, is he going to be aggressive enough to get the offense he needs out of this? I don't know. I mean, when you have to scrape by and get a 2-2 draw, friendly against Cameroon, like it's not necessarily a confidence booster. So I think we look at a U.S. Canada final, and yeah, I mean the U.S. has done nothing but win Nations League, so I think that continues.
Yeah, but I'm definitely looking forward to the games. So
Oh yes, I'm looking forward to Las Vegas. I'm looking forward to the pool. I'm looking forward to the drinks. I'm looking forward to the blackjack tables, and I'm looking forward to the soccer. I'm really excited to see everybody. It's been a couple months since we got to travel, and what greater reason than CONCACAF Nations League, the best thing in sports.
it's on.
Yeah. So I'm getting it. I'll be on site. Donald, you'll be on site. We'll try to get some content together. We'll see how if Vegas deals a good hand or not, as far as whether or not you know too much. I'm already looking forward to that night before party on Wednesday night. It's gonna get rowdy.
So I hate to do this, but I need to break in here because we literally have breaking news. I know we were going to talk about the Gold Cup prelims, but I need to talk about the actual Gold Cup because the United States just lost an opponent. Nicaragua has been booted from the CONCACAF Gold Cup and is relegated to Nations League B. This is
What?
because they fielded an ineligible player in 8 international matches. So Trinidad will take its place in League A, and Trinidad and Tobago will also join the United States men's national team in Group A. So that game in Charlotte on July 2nd, that was supposed to be against Nicaragua, is now against the Soca Warriors from Trinidad and Tobago. That literally came across 5 seconds ago.
Wait, I'm trying to pull up Twitter now. What in the hell? What in the name of Concacaf is going on here right now?
This is so if you remember
this is live. We're on the air right now.
We're literally live. This is not a joke. But like, if you remember, they had the deal about Zendejas and whether Mexico, who was fielding, they were fielding them, whether that was going to be something they would be punished for. I think they had to forfeit 2 friendlies or whatever. Then there was the World Cup thing where it was, what was it, Ecuador and Colombia, where, you know, one guy was ineligible and they were trying to get Ecuador booted from the World Cup like a month before it started. And it turned out that FIFA was like, no, we're not going to do that. And then it went to the Court of Arbitration for Sport and they said, no, we're too late. Like you get penalized later on, but you're not going to start switching up the World Cups right now. This is one where those were like a few matches, but this was the closest thing to the situation. And Nicaragua was fielding a player inelibly for 8 matches during the Nations League, which is how they qualified directly for the Gold Cup. So because of that, they are now out of the Gold Cup. They are relegated to League B. And I don't know the other sanctions, but that's just all that's come across the feed so far.
Yeah. I like to thank the gods of CONCACAF for dropping that right now.
Because
we were really searching hard for a segue right then. And all of a sudden, bam, Nicaragua, you're out.
You're out. So that's wild to me. Like that
yeah.
I figured that would happen, but again, just like the past precedent, it felt like they wouldn't do something about the Gold Cup. Because I mean, the Gold Cup starts in 12 days.
Well, no,
the prelims start
this weekend.
The prelims are this weekend.
According to this, Antigua and Barbuda is going straight into the preliminary round. They have to scramble. They weren't planning on playing in the prelims. All of a sudden, they got to get their ass to Miami to play in the prelims
because week. Trinidad and Tobago was supposed to play Guadalupe.
Yeah.
And so now it's Antigua. Shout out Antigua. But they are now inserted into this. This is amazing. And if you remember, the closest thing we had was 2 years ago when the prelims, I believe Cuba got booted because they didn't have enough players. They couldn't get the visas or whatever, plus COVID.
No, there's a team that had to drop out for COVID.
They had to drop. They got in. It was it Guatemala or someone?
Guatemala was the one that had just fired the coach for not qualifying, and then all of a sudden,
was back in. They're like, oh, by the way, get your people back. You're playing in a day.
Yeah.
So, and they delayed the game like a day so that they can get down to wherever they're playing. I think it was Orlando, but like that was because of COVID, essentially. That we were used to that, but this is like a punishment this close to tournament. I don't think this has happened before. I mean, even look, Florent Malouda played for French Guiana during the Gold Cup, and they didn't boot him from that. They were just like,
They told him he wasn't eligible. They were like,
told him wasn't eligible. He showed up anyway. He played anyway, and they were like, play the game. We'll just forfeit that later. It's fine. And that, I believe, like costed someone like a spot in the group stage because he didn't play against them, but he played against the other team that booted that team out of the group stage. Like, this is amazing.
Oh my God. This is.
Remember we were talking about this is only gonna be like 25 30 minutes, and now like look.
Yeah. Oh my God,
this is amazing.
Well, we were gonna talk about like, we'll do a couple minutes on the Gold Cup prelims. Now everything's changed. Even the matchups we were looking at,
the matchups have changed. This is amazing.
Can you imagine all the Nicaragua fans who have bought tickets for that game in Charlotte? Like, yo, this is awesome. We're gonna see him play
those US. Expensive tickets, because
those very expensive tickets, and they're like, "Yeah, fun fact, you're gonna go see those Soca Warriors, buddy."
That's crazy. I mean, that's just I'm
That's
literally
Concacaf.
shocked
That
that
is Concacaf.
that
This is
is
why we do the podcast.
the
This is
most
exactly why we
CONCACAF
do the
thing I've
podcast.
seen in a long time. And Ronnie Brunswick exists.
Oh my god. The prelims are in like 4 days. Do we have the schedule?
We do have the schedule. So let me rephrase. You said Antigua and Barbuda is taking Trinidad and Tobago's spot, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so here is the schedule. There's 3 games on June 16th.
Subject to change.
Subject to change, apparently. But on June 16th and June 17th, right now, there are 3 games scheduled on each day. On June 16th, we have Trinidad and Tobago taking on Antigua and Barbuda now.
That's the thing. They're literally the first game.
They are the first game of this tournament. So Antigua and Barbuda are taking on Guadeloupe. You have Martinique taking on St. Lucia, and then you have Curacao taking on St. Kitts and Nevis. On the 17th, you have French Guiana taking on St. Martin, the Dutch side. Suriname taking on Puerto Rico, and Guyana taking on Grenada. Now, basically, it's like the winner of, not to bore you, but here are the matchups for the whoever wins. So the winner of Antigua and Barbuda will take on the winner of Guyana and Grenada. The winner will advance to Group D play. Martinique and St. Lucia, that winner will take on Suriname or Puerto Rico. And the winner of that matchup will go to Group C. And then Curacao and St. Kitts and Nevis will take on the winner of French Guiana and St. Martin. The winner of that will join Trinidad and Tobago and the United States in Group A. We had a whole segment planned out for this. It just got blown up.
Oh my
we don't even know who's playing. And like I said, like the last time this happened in 2021, they delayed games so that Guatemala could reassemble their crew that had just dispersed for the summer and get them back so that they can get them to whatever game they were supposed to play. And I feel like for Antigua Barbuda, I don't know if they were scheduled to play games in this window. All of that has changed now. So they have to kind of get their team together and get them to the prelims. This is, man.
We're just like completely flustered over this whole scenario. Oh my God. I'm trying to find the 2021 info. But yeah, Guatemala had just 2021 Gold Cup. You can edit this out if you want.
No, I want to keep this in because I feel like this is
we're working through it as
let me just tell the listeners how this, like, you were finishing up all of that stuff about Nations League and you were wrapping it up, and literally as you're wrapping it up, I get the notifications for certain journalists and stuff like that, and also for people that come across that we have on our feed. And so that notification from Steve Goff came across, followed by John Arnold. Within seconds of each other. And my face just went blank. And I could see Eric trying to finish his stuff and looking at me like, why is he, is he watching the game or something? Like, what's he looking at? That's where we were at. Like, literally, we were about to talk about the Gold Cup prelims, and we were going to start with Trinidad and Tobago, who is now in Group A.
Yeah. Cuba in 2021, Cuba couldn't play their prelims, so French Guiana was awarded a 3-0 win, and they got through to the second round. Yeah.
But no, there was a team. Who was the team that got in, that won, and then had to drop out because of COVID? Because Guatemala, remember, lost, and then all of a sudden we're like, oh, sorry, joking, you're back in. And they ended up going to the Gold Cup.
I don't know. I can't seem to parse.
You remember this, right?
Quickly.
Like, you remember?
No, I remember this. I remember.
I just forgot the team that was a part of that.
Irregardless, Gold Cup. Playing the wild card again. What's the Uno card? The reverse. You just throw it down.
Yeah.
Concacaf always pulling that reverse card. Oh my God. All right. I think, is there anything else we need to talk about? I got a pact for Vegas at some point here.
Oh, I do too.
Okay. So we're going to wrap this up.
I got you. Here it is.
Okay.
In
Wait, we got it.
2021, Curacao had qualified via the Nations League, and they got COVID. So they said that CONCACAF said they will replace them with the next highest ranked team from qualification based on wins, draws, and goal difference. And by one goal, Guatemala qualified for that over French Guiana.
Okay. Nice. All right. So we'll wrap it up there.
Yeah.
We're just like, we are completely off the rails here. Yeah, this podcast has been a whirlwind, you know. So yeah, you follow us on social media at Concacaf, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, POD Concacaf. If you want to email us, podcacaf@gmail.com. You should support us on Patreon, patreon.com/podcacaf. Access to the One More Round episode that we're probably going to record after this. Once we gather ourselves, support the podcast, get access to our Patreon, you get access
Discord.
to our Patreon, obviously. Our Discord, we're all disheveled here, but there's a Discord where we talk CONCACAF and CONCACAF only in there.
In fact, the One More Round that we're about to record is coming from a patron who asked a great question earlier in our Discord, and we said, you know what? That should be something we discuss. So you have that access to us 24/7.
You have that access all times. You can talk with other CONCACAF enthusiasts. It's good. We're trying to build a CONCACAF community through our podcast. Donald, where can people find you?
At Blazing DW. Also, I just want to let people know who are going to be in Vegas. My other podcast, USA Soccer Cast. We have stickers and we have magnets. So if you are following that account at USA Soccer Cast, you can find me in Vegas and you will get either a magnet or a sticker. Eric, you already follow it, but you're going to get one anyway. So
love stickers. If you also want swag from our podcast, you can get to our shop via our link tree on our social medias. Go check that out. Get your CONCACAF themed merch.
We have some merch too that we're going to be giving away on Twitter.
Well, we tried to give it away. We did like a prediction contest, and no one got it. No one got close. Like, guess the score of the game. And everyone's going 1-1 or 2-2, and Grenada beat somebody 6-0. No one was even close.
So we will try again. We will try again. Maybe predictions of the Nations League finals, and then from there we have a hoodie, and then we also have a tank top. A black tank top. I believe it has the World of CONCACAF logo on both. So look for Twitter and look for those predictions. Get yours in, because if you do, you could win some swag.
Yeah. Also, I know Jonathan didn't join us tonight, but follow him at JSlapeSSP on Twitter, and Speedway Soccer. It's at Speedway Soccer.
Speedway Soccer, yeah.
Yeah. And his work there. Slate, we love you. We wish you were here, but we understand. And yeah, we'll see you in Vegas. If you're in Vegas, let us know. We'll be around. Love to meet the fans of the pod. So we'll wrap it up there. Take care of each other. Be a good friend. And support soccer in your community.
Amen.